Now we have the Representative Tim Miller's prison bill, House File 1510. For the crowd's information, you know from being here before that I like to give everybody a chance to testify on both sides. And actually I gave, I think, opposition more last time. And so to be fair, we're going to run over just for you folks so you'll all be able to testify. We're going to go over the limit. I would just ask that in change for that courtesy that you give us the same and refrain from clapping, yelling, shouting. And let's have an orderly meeting, and we'll hear everybody on both sides. And the bill is just going to be held over for possible inclusion at this point anyway. So the chair would move House File 1510 to be held over for possible inclusion. Ms. Representative Miller, go ahead with your,
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment.
Okay, the A2 and the DE1 instead of
The A2.
Okay. Representative Miller, the chair will move the H1510A2 amendment to your bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members, thank you for hearing my bill today. This bill is simple and straightforward. It requires the Department of Corrections Commissioner to enter into negotiations to utilize the Prairie Correctional Facility in Appleton, Minnesota, either through lease, to own, or purchase of the facility. This bill is to address a simple fact. By the department's own recognition, there are not enough beds for current state offenders. Those numbers are going to increase, and there is a fully functional, adequate facility in Appleton, Minnesota to address those needs. None of these facts are disputed. Last year, the Department of Corrections referred to prison overcrowding in Minnesota as a crisis. By the department's own projections, which were presented to this committee earlier this session, our offender population will grow and exceed current capacity by more than 900 inmates by 2024. Members, that means that nearly 10% of the offenders in the state's care will not be able to be housed in state correctional facilities. As I said, there's not enough beds, nor are there in the future, and there's an existing asset in Minnesota that can address this problem. That's not disputed. What is disputed are many other objections presented over the last couple of years. I believe we have addressed all of the stated concerns, only to still have disagreement with the department, and I don't understand why. I was told we shouldn't have a private prison housing Minnesota offenders, so we made it clear that the state should lease the entire facility or buy it and have department officers running it. I was told non-union members shouldn't work there. If the DOC runs it, there won't be. In fact, there will be 200 to 300 union jobs created. I was told there was not a sufficient labor pool in the region, and so we looked with deed zone numbers. We proved that incorrect. I was told Appleton residents didn't support this, and we filled the town hall with over 500 residents showing up in support. We have an online petition that has well over 1,000 signatures. There are over 50 cities, counties, and regional organizations supporting the Appleton option. I've been told Appleton is too far away from the rest of the facilities and too far away from the urban core. If you look at my graphic that was handed out, you will see that Appleton is closer to the main hub for processing incoming offenders in St. Cloud than Faribault, and it's only slightly further than Stillwater. If you look at other states nearby, also on my graphic, you will see a much more diversified prison system away from metropolitan centers. Also at this time, we have state offenders housed in county jails throughout the state, overburdening that system as well. I've been told Appleton facilities are not to standard, they are run down and need improvements. And yet today as we sit here, the facility is fully licensed to operate in the state. It is rated at this time to a level 4 security. It has a full-time staff at this time ensuring all functions of the facility are fully operational. Anyone who has toured the facility knows it to be among the best in this state. Furthermore, when the state enters into negotiations to lease, to own, or to purchase, any required improvements will be part of that conversation. I had correctional officers visit my office a few weeks ago, and they showed concern as to the medical capabilities of the region should an officer need attention. If you will again look at my graphic, we have displayed the EMS capabilities. There's a hospital and ambulance service in Appleton. If an injury is serious enough, airlift services from Wilmer and Redwood Falls can be there within 18 minutes, If weather or other reasons prohibit a helicopter from these locations, they can come from St. Cloud or Fargo. Plus, Mr. Chair, there is more than just a housing crisis the state is facing. At this time, there are approximately 500 state offenders housed in county jails. They are not receiving the drug treatment, mental health care, or education intended to reduce recidivism and to make them productive members of our society when they have served their time. Members of the committee, despite a lot of objections, there is still one simple truth. The state does not have enough beds for current or future needs, and there is an asset already available to address this need in Appleton, Minnesota. I offered the amendment as a way to allow the DLC to address their crisis in a reasonable time. We need a solution to prison overcrowding in Minnesota now, and I believe that utilizing the Appleton Prison Policy Facility is a no-brainer. It presents the most cost-effective, flexible option to meet our current and future needs, and I ask for your support. Thank you, and Mr. Chair, I have a couple testifiers.
Okay, sir, your name and title and begin.
Mr. Chair and members, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Gary Hendricks. I'm a Swift County Commissioner since 1997. I'm also the current president of the Association of Minnesota Counties. I concur a lot with what our representative just said, and a lot of my testimony was to go into that, so and to spare you the time. Basically, I want to assure people we are not here to say we want more people locked up. That is not our request at all. What I'm asking you to do is to consider addressing a serious problem, and that is in a straightforward and a financial responsible way. Last year, when you passed legislation about sentencing reform, we hope that these reforms will have an impact on the state of Minnesota inmate population, but they were not really meant to decrease the total population. They were to slow the growth. And we know that the growth will continue. So we're looking for this option as an option for the state to enter into an agreement. Again, we're not looking for it to be run by another entity other than the state of Minnesota. And that is our request today. On behalf of thousands of Minnesotans who live in western Minnesota, I think this is the best opportunity for our community. It employed people over 20 counties. It took a wide swath of our area and added economic development to it. But again, we're there to program the individuals that are currently incarcerated, and overall, we think this is the best solution for a serious and persistent problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, if your name and title and begin.
Mr. Chairman and members, thank you for considering this proposal, and thanks for Representative Tim Miller for championing it. My name is Chad Silty, and I am the mayor of the city of Appleton. I am in front of this committee today as the mayor of a town that has seen the community asset be the source of jobs, controversy, and opportunity. Regardless of your feelings about the owner of the prison and Appleton facility, it is my hope that you will listen to our community story and our request. We are asking that the state of Minnesota do an honest, transparent, and thorough analysis of what it might mean for the state of Minnesota to own or lease the Appleton facility, as opposed to continue forward with its past proposal to build new prison beds. Beyond the physical structure of the prison that our community has to offer, Appleton, Swift County, and the surrounding region offers the infrastructure necessary to provide quality rehabilitation and support services to inmates that are there prepared to re-enter their communities. We also provide a wonderful quality of life for working families. The commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Corrections said that the housing state inmates in county jails is not an ideal solution, and of course we agree. The prison facility in Appleton is well equipped and has ample space to provide all the same programming that is provided in other state correctional facilities. In addition, I urge the members of this committee to consider the state's other aging correctional facilities. The St. Cloud, Stillwater prisons are both well over 100 years old, making them extremely costly to maintain and keep up to date. As the state of Minnesota considers not only to solve prison overcrowding in the short term, but also how to continue to provide high-quality corrections in the long term. The Appleton Prison Facility presents a much newer, modern, and viable alternative to increasingly old and costly prohibited prison facilities. Any way you look at it, the prison facility in Appleton must be a major part of the discussion about the future of corrections in Minnesota. We are here today to urge you to do what is best for the inmates, for the public safety, and for our communities in western Minnesota, and for the state as a whole. Please support this proposal and move forward with the Appleton option. Thank you very much for your time today.
Representative Hilton, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is to the testifier, Mr. Representative Miller, or you certainly could answer it. It's my understanding that in the last round of discussions or negotiations, CCA was, now Civic Corps, was proposing that the state pay approximately $100 million for the facility if they were to buy it. Yet the value, the local value that's been placed on the facility is about $14 million. This facility was once owned by the local jurisdictions. I think it was the county or a collaborative. If the collaborative or the local units of government think that this is such a great deal for the state, why don't they consider purchasing the facility and attempt to lease the beds to the state? As many of the folks' concerns is with a private entity. This was once owned by a local unit of government. Why is it that the local unit of government themselves aren't looking to purchase this facility and are looking to the state to do it?
Whoever would like to answer.
Mr. Chair, I can do that.
Representative Miller.
Mr. Chair, Representative Hillstrom, and if I miss any part, there's a couple different questions in there, so please repeat that. So first of all, to that, the history on the numbers that were put last year when we were negotiating, it was very difficult. The whole emphasis last year was to negotiate with the governor's office, Department of Administration, Department of Corrections. And with that, there were no numbers out there. There were simply hypotheticals. There was increased pressure from the governor's office to say, well, what do you think that you want? Should we move forward? And so it's my understanding that CCA, which is now called Core Civic, so if you hear it called that, understand. What Core Civic suggested was an initial offering, and it was either $99 million over 3 years at no interest. The discussion to lease on real basic figures was based on just prison population numbers and stuff was between 6 to 8 million, but that was also totally established off of nothing firm of what the state would even want to do at the facility. That was only at the request of the governor's office to throw down a number, but it was strongly emphasized. I was at not that meeting, but I was at subsequent meetings to where they emphasized to me, Representative Miller, this is just the number that we're throwing. We anticipate that we're going to have vigorous and good conversations with the department as to what the real value is, as to what the lease would be, because you can't set a lease if you don't know what you're going to do. So that was considered. Any of the improvements that need to be made would get folded into that. I sensed a good faith effort by Core Civic to move forward in that way. Now, you're referring to about the $14 million was the assessed value. Mm-hmm. That was negotiated, and that's where these two people may be able to give the history on that. But my understanding is that that was a negotiated property tax value on a prison sitting empty. As you might imagine, an empty asset has totally different dynamics, especially of that size. And so I can't attest to why they negotiated that amount. I'm not saying the place is worth $14 million. I'm not saying it's worth $99 million. I'm not saying it's worth $500. I'm not saying it's worth $5 million. The point is what my bill is intended to do is to bring the state of Minnesota to the table, understanding that they have a need for more beds, and there's an asset in greater Minnesota that's ready to go to be able to do it. What the state purchases for it is up to the people that negotiate that.
Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to ask the local units of government, you previously owned the facility, and then you sold it to the private entity. Has there been any discussion about the local community purchasing it and leasing beds back to the state, as many other sheriff entities currently do?
As far as with the city of Appleton, there hasn't been any discussion with us to buy the facility. I think the facility as a whole right now would probably be more than what the Appleton community could handle as far as a financial obligation. As far as if we could look at buying it and then having a solid lease set up so that we would be able to handle the bond payments, that might be open for discussion. But as of to now, that has never come up to us that if we were to look at buying it, that the state would look at leasing it from the local community and then make the lease payments, which we can turn around and then service the debt.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Hilsman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only reason why I ask is because many times we get testimony that this is a public need, that this is in the public good to own and operate this facility. But local units of government have the opportunity to do many things to deal with local need, and I haven't once heard anyone talk about taking the prison back via eminent domain. And if it was a real public need, right, you could make the argument that the state or the local unit of government should be in possession of this asset. It is in the public's best interest. And then we wouldn't be talking about whether or not Core Civic or CCA is a good business to get into, to do a deal with. And I'll have more conversations about that, Mr. Chair, when we get to my amendment.
Okay, short answer, Representative.
Very short answer, Mr. Chair, Representative Hellsman. Talking about eminent domain to just take someone's property is a very serious discussion, and I don't even recommend it. But so I would caution against that.
Okay, who do we have? Any more supporters for you guys or testimony, or do we go to the opposition now? Who out there would like to testify? Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Roy, you wanted to say a few things? We have good opportunity. And then if you folks want to figure out a spokesman or something, you got somebody who'd like to. Oh, we have a list here. Max Hall, if you're here, why don't you get on the queue, ready to go after the commissioner. Commissioner, welcome with your name and title and begin.
Mr. Chair, committee members, Tom Roy, Commissioner of Corrections. I think I have represented the position of the department and the governor last year, and it has been well documented. I would just like to speak to the amendment and as a practitioner. The amendment, I think, is more palatable in that it says at such time that the commissioner determines that the department has insufficient number of prison beds. The growth of prison capacity is a concern to us, of course it is, but this proposal suggests that there's only one solution to a prison growth, and that only solution is adding another facility. And if you recall from previous testimony, we have offered other strategies to deal with prison population, and some of those are already bearing fruit. The drug legislation, if you recall, in my previous testimony, has already reduced some numbers, and we will demonstrate those more significantly in another 6 months. But we are already seeing with some policy adjustments regarding parole violators, we are seeing that our housing out of facility, which is what we call our jail population, we are currently at about 300, down from the 500, which was earlier quoted. So we're seeing a leveling and even a downward trend in that jail usage. The state also has tremendous capacity right now in county jail beds. There's about 10,000 total jail beds in the state. The average daily population for those jail beds is about 7,400, and the functional capacity that's available in county jails is 1,600 beds. That's not to say that we would continue or like to use county jails as a solution, but it is certainly an interim option for us. We also have had a pretty significant bonding proposal that does expand capacity in existing facility footprints. A perfect example is our Lino Lakes facility, which has an empty building with a bonding proposal of about $6 million. We can add about 100 beds to that facility. We have potential to expand our challenge incarceration program, both in Togo and in Willow River. And as we have heard earlier today from the proposal of Representative O'Neill, we are working with community partners to establish community alternatives for violators. About half of our inmates come back to our facilities for under 6 months. So we have a very short duration, very short turnaround for a large number of our folks. And the strategy that was earlier talked about, we think is very positive and will impact future prison growth. I mentioned the drug reform as a part of last year's activities. That we hope will affect prison beds. I'm not sure what the appetite is for a continued adjustment of drug sentencing or any other kinds of sentencing, but certainly that is an option as well. So I just wanted to discourage the notion that the only solution to prison capacity is adding another facility. We have offered strategies that are far more cost effective. And the last point I will make is probably the most important point that I will make all morning. Purchasing or leasing is one factor, and that is probably the lesser factor of operating a prison. Once a prison is opened, of this size or even lesser capacity, we're looking at a $30 to $40 million annual expenditure to operate a prison. That is no insignificant amount. So between the purchase at $50 million perhaps, or a lease, and adding a $30 or $40 million operating budget, pretty soon we have achieved the whole target of this committee. And I think the long-term impact of a budget strategy like that is not necessarily a thoughtful way to approach prison capacity. And I know there are other testifiers. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the diligence that this committee has looked at this issue. I appreciate the diligence that the local community has looked at that. But I'm just offering other solutions, which is my responsibility.
Commissioner, I guess I disagree that I don't know of anybody here that's thought that this was the only solution. In fact, we've been in favor of a lot of solutions that would reduce prison population, you know, and with all our programs. And I don't think it's going to be our budget target if we decide to buy the joint. And it's going to come from other places, so it wouldn't be just a committee jurisdiction that we'd have to worry about in our budget. But anybody have a question to the commissioner, or is it just in general?
Just a question for the commissioner, I guess. He answered most of what I was going to ask, but I guess you're talking about needing beds, right? And how many beds are available in Appleton, and how many beds are you needing?
Commissioner?
Representative, could you restate that question for me?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Russell.
You said that you were in need of beds because of the number that are housed outside of prison in the county jails and such. Okay. How many beds are there available in Appleton? Someplace that's ready to go.
Appleton, Mr. Chair, representative has a capacity of 1,600 beds.
And how many did you say you needed?
We're currently housing out of facility 300.
Okay. Now, that, I guess, would that accommodate what you needed versus new construction at another location?
Mr. Chair, Representative, those beds are certainly available.
Okay. Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to give the commissioner a chance to respond to the point that the chair made about, because certainly the committee has been looking at many other possibilities, but as I read this language, Commissioner, and I guess you'd be the person this to be directed to, it seems to be saying that once you determine that that the number of beds and the population don't match, then you're done. You have to enter into a contract to purchase or operate the facility. It's not that you would have to make a determination that we need a new facility or that we need more beds to be available or any of those things, any of those other options, regardless of whether they may be pursued other places. This language requires you to do this particular option, is how I read this, but just want to give you a chance to comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Representative, that is my interpretation, that once that threshold is achieved, or that I designate or determine that that threshold has been achieved, then my only option is to do this.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, when we were talking only option, I was just saying that there are other options we're trying to use to reduce prison populations. This is the option we're talking about in this bill, but I mean through the different treatment course that we have and the drug sentencing guidelines, things like that. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'd like to clarify with my very respected, we get along great, Representative Pinto, but we address that because that's a fair question to ask, and it says, at such time, the commissioner determines the department has an insufficient number of prison beds to house the current or projected population and needs to expand an existing facility or build a new facility. So there's the presumption there, and that's why we offered this, because I understand that with my bill, we were kind of heavy-handed. The next 12 months, you're going to take a prison whether you like it or not. And while I disagree with the commissioner on the numbers, I can't prove that I'm wrong, so I appreciate and will respect those numbers, but what we're seeing is anecdotally out in the county jails and stuff, that these numbers are going to increase, and it's creating an increasing burden. There is going to come a time, I believe, that the department is going to have to say, okay, we're going to need more beds. Matter of fact, last year they had a bonding proposal for 500 beds. So my amendment is intended to address exactly that. We don't want to force a hand prematurely, but at such time the commissioner says, okay, we need more beds, then we're going to go address those at Appleton. And I would argue that that's being fiscally responsible for the state of Minnesota. I think I've shown with my graphic that there's nothing peculiar about Appleton and distance-wise that would create such a great increase, and if they had to create other beds also. And I think that the fiscal note also reflects some of that.
Commissioner, have you solved the problem of prisoners not wanting to be in county jails? When I was a jailer, the last thing a state prisoner wanted to do is come to the county with the lack of a library, lack of an exercise yard, lack of options. What's that like now, all these prisoners out there? Is the amount of service greatly increased out there, or how's that going?
Mr. Chair, county jails certainly don't offer a lot of the programming that we offer in the state prisons. My comment on the short duration of many of our inmates speaks to that even when those short timers come back to our prison facilities, they aren't offered a full menu of treatment options as well. Some people refer to it as 3 hots and a cot, and I don't want to make light of that, but many of the offenders that come back on violations into our facilities right now aren't offered a whole lot of programming, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. Appreciate it. Max? Oh, we got another list over here. Representative Johnson and then Considine.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, but I know I've heard anywhere, number of people we have in the county jail systems, anywhere from 300 to 700. And it fluctuates. My understanding, it does fluctuate daily. It could be down at 300 level for a couple months, and then it could jump up again. Everything's in flux. The issue I have, or I'm concerned about, is the fact that those inmates in the county facilities are not getting the treatment programs that we have available in the state system. And that's a big disservice to them. And I think because they're not, those treatment and those programs that we have can cause a huge increase in the recidivism rate. Is that, I don't think that's good for the public. That's not good for the inmates. It's not good for our staff. It's not good for the county staff. It's a burden. It is a huge burden on the counties. Where you look at the last prison that was built was Rush City. That was back in 1980, late 1980s, early 1900s, or 1990s. We're looking at 30 years since we we had a substantial increase in the number of beds in the county, in the state system. Do I want to increase the bed capacity? I wish we could decrease it. That was because people wouldn't be breaking the laws and causing issues, committing felonies that have to go into that system. In fact, right now, Minnesota is one of the lowest incarceration rates in the country. We have some of the shortest sentences in the country. There's many times you have to commit a felony 4 or 5 times before you finally get to the state system. Most of it is spent in the county system, and most of it's spent on paper. And we innovated that system many years ago, and we have a lot of states now starting to implement the system that we use. But our population is growing, and unfortunately, the percentage of those that commit crime is staying somewhat flat. That means as our population grows, our number we have incarcerated is going to grow. And in 30 years, we went from having just enough beds to cover everything to being 3 to, by your numbers, by 2024, we're going to be 900 beds short. I see this as an option to look at. Not only would it alleviate the issues of having these, as you put, 3 hots and a cot, but having a facility where these individuals could have the treatment programs and the services that could make them useful in the communities. But it also do another thing. The rest of our system that is bulging at the wall, and the doors are ready to explode because they're so full, is causing safety concerns at those facilities, where the numbers could be brought down at those facilities to make them safer and better for not only the staff, but for the individuals that are incarcerated there. So, Representative Miller, I want to thank you for bringing this forward, and I do like this amendment because it gives them time to look at it, gives us time to look at the numbers, what's going to be best not only for the community of Appleton, but for the state of Minnesota.
Okay, we're going to have Representative Considine question, and then we've got to get through the public testimony. So, Representative Considine.
Why, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Roy, has anybody from your organization inspected the prison, been inside of it, looked around? The reason I'm asking is because I recall that when they first opened up, it was discovered that CCA, or CORSIT, whatever their name is now, hadn't bothered to put in sprinkler system, and that it then had to be put in. The other thing was that a number of the initially, the quality of the construction was suspect. At one point, there was a riot out at Appleton, and that was directly related to there was nothing to do. Is there programming space even in the prison? Again, CCA was not known for actually including that in their prisons. And like I say, the one time there was the riot, I actually got to see video of that at one point in a training facility. So my question is anybody from your organization taking a look at this? Is there programming space? Is there an adequate kitchen? Is there problems with the facility as far as the construction?
If you give as short an answer as possible, then we're going to go into Representative Hilstron's amendment and then public testimony. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Representative Considine, I would like to offer you our inspection report that will give you details. We have to license that facility, and if it was operated by another entity, we have to see what the staffing patterns are, what the programming structure is to determine if it does meet ACA standards, American Corrections Association standards. So there's the physical plant, and then there's the operational plan that has to be approved, and I will gladly share that with you. It's not falling down, and in my conversations with the county folks, they have suggested that there is regular maintenance.
Okay. Representative Hillstrom, would you like to offer your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to offer, I believe it's the DE1 amendment.
Representative Hillstrom offers the DE1 amendment. You want to explain your amendment, Representative Hillstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members, I have introduced a bill which bans the use of private prisons here in Minnesota, and that is this language. This bill has existed for a number of years. Members, one of the most common critiques of private prisons is that the industry's goal is to maximize profits, and that's at odds with the traditional goals of their criminal justice systems. And as such, offender rehabilitation, reducing recidivism rates, and keeping the public safe become at odds when you're dealing with a private entity. Now, Representative Miller did do an amendment to change the proposal slightly. But members, one of the biggest challenges with this proposal is, one, who we would be buying the prison from in the event the state bought it. But in the event the state leased the prison, the state would either be in a position to lease the entire thing, which the state doesn't need, to the tune of more than $26 million or more per year, or they would be in a situation where they would lease a portion of the space and allow CCA or CoreCivic to continue to use the facility for other inmates. So that's one of the reasons why CCA's reputation and historical perspective is really valid and important related to this facility. At one time, the state of Minnesota did in fact lease beds from CCA, and there were audits and there were problems. It was a bipartisan effort to stop leasing space from CCA, and it was actually Governor Pawlenty who stopped using the facility. CCA or CoreCivic had allegations and lawsuits and court awards of damages because of civil rights violations, of abuses, and of medical neglect. And I could go through those cases one at a time, but in light of the public testimony that we still want to take, I'm not going to do that. There were incidents of violence, which was higher in private prisons than in the publicly managed facilities. And members, our own study right here in Minnesota showed that any inmate that we sent to the Prairie Correctional Facility was more likely to recidivate. So in 2013, the Minnesota Department of Corrections performed a study of 3,532 Minnesota prisoners released between 2007 and 2009. And we found that those persons that were incarcerated at the Prairie Correctional Facility were 13% more likely to be rearrested and 22% more likely to be then convicted. So I've been working on this proposal to not do business with CCA for a long time, the better part of a decade. They are not good citizens. They have been found to have lied about their staffing. They have been found liable for damages due to that. And members, that was one of the reasons why I asked why the local community themselves weren't considering whether or not they wanted to buy this prison. The CCA has consistently asked for like $100 million when they actually sued to bring down the value of their property to $14 million, even when it was still housing inmates. So with that, I ask that members vote in favor of this amendment. We do not belong leasing this facility. We do not belong buying this facility. We don't currently have a need for it, and we do not want to be in the business with a company like CCA. I'd ask for a roll call, Mr. Chair.
Representative O'Neill, roll call noted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Representative Hillstrom, I just have a question, a clarification. Since I just brought the bill that would encourage restructure and to places that are nonprofits like RS Eden, Minnesota Teen Challenge, and so on. And your definition of inmate, would that conflict with what I just tried to do with restructure? Or also when Teen Challenge also receives folks from the courts when they have been sentenced essentially to treatment? And I just want to make sure that this amendment would not do anything to any of the nonprofits that do such good work for, especially in chemical dependency treatment and some in mental health treatment. It would be the definition of what an inmate is, and are they under the jurisdiction of the DOC? Because then they would fall under that, and all of those great nonprofits would be prohibited from actually receiving any of the inmates.
Representative Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative O'Neill. This would not impact any of those treatment facilities. This is about inmates that are being housed in these correctional facilities. There is an additional facility that is locally operated here in Minnesota that is operated by a nonprofit in Ramsey. It would impact that. I do not believe that this state should be outsourcing our prison population and the corrections that we do, and that's what this goes to. So it doesn't affect those.
Okay, if there's no other questions, any follow-up?
Mr. Chair, I just want to get that confirmed from nonpartisan staff. I'm just really concerned that something like this would head us in a direction that we don't want to go, that's outside of the intended consequences.
Mr. Debo.
Mr. Chair and members, inmate is defined as someone who's committed to the Commissioner of Corrections, and so if they're not sent to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections, then they wouldn't fall under this restriction. But if they're kept local, they would not be committed to the Commissioner of Corrections.
Representative Johnson, quickly.
Mr. Chair, again, I had the same concerns as Representative O'Neill, but maybe Mr. Debo can clarify. If somebody is on probation, felony probation, are they under the Department of Corrections? If so, if they have a condition that requires them to be involved in a treatment program or something like that, would that affect that?
Mr. Debo. You understand the question?
Mr. Chair, could he, Mr. Johnson, or Representative Johnson, repeat the question?
Go ahead and repeat the question.
If somebody's on probation, are they under the Department of Corrections? If it's a felony probation?
What about it? If somebody,
Would that be, would this cover them as not being able to be involved in like a nonprofit organization for treatment or something like that, if they're court ordered there under felony probation?
Mr. Chair, Representative Johnson, as long as the court does not commit the offender to the commissioner, then they would not be under the commissioner's control, and so they'd be handled locally by the court in local probation.
okay. Representative Hillstrom has offered the DE1 amendment, asked for a roll call. Go ahead, take the vote.
Representative Cornish.
No.
Representative Johnson.
No.
Representative Hillstrom.
Aye.
Representative Becker Finn.
Yes.
Representative Considine.
Yes.
Representative Dean.
Aye.
Representative Frankie.
No.
Representative Grossel.
No.
Representative Howe. Representative Lomer.
No.
Representative Lucero.
No.
Representative Newberger.
No.
Representative O'Neill.
No.
Representative Pinto.
Yes.
Representative Ward.
Yes.
Representative Zerwas.
Okay, the vote 10 nay and 6A, the motion fails. Okay, we got Max Hall AFSCME on the list here. One question that I had is when the testifiers come up is where the responsibility will lie if the federal government does approve federal prisons and we have a federal prison. Once the Department of Corrections hasn't been much help and we haven't made a lease to run by the DOC or any arrangements to be made by run to state workers, who's going to be responsibility for that fall on? Whose fault is that? In other words, you've heard a lot of talk nationally about making federal prisons or private prisons nationally. And that's one thing I worry about is all this lack of cooperation or trying to find some system where we can make it work as a state prison with state workers and union workers. And we ignore that and don't do it, and then it comes in after the fact and is made a private prison. So that's one of the drives I'm kind of trying to figure out where the common sense is in that. But Max, which one are you? Go ahead, sir.
Yep. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Max Hall. I'm the legislative representative with AFSCME Council 5. The American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees represents about 43,000 Minnesotans, and we are strongly opposed to House File 1510, Representative Miller's bill to reopen the private prison facility located in Appleton, Minnesota. We are strongly supportive of House File 1692, which is Representative Hillstrom's bill to ban private prisons. And we were disappointed to see that Representative Hillstrom's DE1 amendment failed in this committee. AFSCME Council 5 and our members have taken a position that we are strongly supportive of banning private prisons throughout the state of Minnesota. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I will conclude and I will turn it over to two of our correctional officer members for additional testimony, starting with Sergeant Rick Nyson.
Thank you, Mr. Hall, for your brevity. Go ahead, sir, your name and title. And
Mr. Chair, committee members, I'm Rick Nyson. I'm a corrections officer at the Minnesota Correctional Facility in St. Cloud. I'm also the president of our AFSCME Local 599 and a proud Council 5 executive member of AFSCME. I've worked in the prisons for 25 years. The private prison industry is again trying to get a foothold in Minnesota. Please stop them. We don't want to work for a corporation that drives down our wages, benefits, and retirement security. But this is much more than protecting a good job, a good union job that provides for our families. It's immoral to profit from locking people up. It has nothing to do with justice, and it's all about corporations making billions from human misery. We expose CCA so well that they changed their name to CoreCivic. But rebranding cannot erase their abuses. Let's be clear. Criminal justice is the core responsibility of government. Public workers should be protecting public safety, period. Here's our problem. Our state-run prisons are full, and legislators want to remedy the overcrowding. Some think the solution is to reopen a private prison in Appleton. They want the state to lease it, and they want corrections to run it and staff it. This is wrong on many, many levels. AFSCME opposes the lease. Our corrections officers don't want to work in a CoreCivic prison. The Department of Corrections doesn't want or need the Appleton prison, and Governor Dayton has pledged to veto a bill to lease it. You may ask yourself, why is AFSCME worried about the lease? Corrections officers will staff the prison and run it. Beware of the bait and switch. Once the lease runs out, CoreCivic will raise the price significantly or will be there to step in and run the prison. They'll invite us to apply for a job as a low-wage guard in an understaffed prison. That's how they do business, and the price will be sky high. And Minnesotans will pay for they will not pay for it in only dollars and cents. Doing business with CoreCivic is like doing business with the devil. The company cuts corners to make a buck, and they profit off of human misery. Their trail of abuses are well documented. Spoiled and wormy food, inmates triple bunked and left without medical care, toilets with no running water, inmates forced to defecate in plastic bags, riots, excessive force, and sexual assault. These dangerous conditions put inmates, staff, and public at risk. I was taught three things as a young officer. I am responsible for the public safety, the safety of my coworkers, and the safety of our inmates. That's difficult to accomplish most days. Imagine trying to do it with a CEO or a board of directors dictating your actions for profit. You may wonder why I condemn prisons. My faith guides my work as a correctional officer. It is not my job to judge or punish anyone in my charge. I believe that will be taken care of way above my pay grade. Treating each other with respect and dignity is not something we should do, it's something we must do. My coworkers take that approach every time they put this uniform on. Reopening Appleton benefits one group and one group only. That's CoreCivic. AFSCME supports sentencing reform as a better way to address our overcrowding prisons. The sentencing reform bill authored by Senator Latz passed with bipartisan support last session. It should remedy the problem of overcrowding so there's no need for these private prison beds. The best way to invest in public safety is to bond for a new intake in St. Cloud, new medical beds in Lino Lakes, and a boot camp in Togo. You should also support the DOC's request for 86 additional correctional officers. Don't let Civic Corps laugh all the way to the banks with our tax dollars. Thank you for listening, and again, we oppose House File 510. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next up, your name and title and begin.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name's Brian Lowers. I'm a corrections sergeant at the state prison in Faribault. Approximately 20 years ago, I worked for CCA at the Appleton facility. I worked there for 9 months. I've seen some of the bait and switch procedures they used. I got hired as a corrections officer out there under the presumption that after 3 months I'd be promoted to a caseworker, which was consistent with my education background, as I got a degree in psychology and corrections and was looking to go into the probation field. I went out to that facility, and after approximately 3 months, I was passed over for a promotion or moved to the position that I was looking to go out there to actually work in, due to a lack of ability of the CCA to get staffing for security. That went on, and it happened a second and a third time. At that point, I saw that, you know, this is nothing more than a bait and switch, and I am not doing anything here for my career, and I left the area. I'm not the only one out there at the time. Many people left the area because of situations like that. There's been some talk about the infrastructure of the facility out there. I worked out there, and I know that there was areas that weren't maintained, whether it be due to lighting, plumbing, or whatnot. And there really isn't a whole lot of tradesmen in that area to respond to situations like that, to repair things. CCA was trying to make the state believe that they met all these inspections, but there was significant problems there. In that area, there's a lower population than many of the areas where our other facilities are. There's a lower population to draw employees from. In Appleton, per se, there's a very limited amount of professional people in the psychology, mental health field, health services field, RNs, doctors, whatnot. The smaller Appleton Hospital is not able to deal with a major emergency with major medical problems, be it with a staff person or inmates. There's just not the personnel there. Someone mentioned that there was, that they could draw staff from 20 different counties. Well, 20 different counties is a long ways away for some people to relocate to or to respond. When I lived out in Appleton, I believe there was one full-time police officer, perhaps another part-time officer. Swift County Sheriff's Department, not a large county and not a large budget. They probably didn't have a very big, they didn't have a lot of deputies. So in the event of, weather emergencies, power outages, or situations where there would be an evacuation of the prison, there was no plan by CCA or anyone out there. They just hoped it wouldn't happen. But I don't think that the Minnesota wants to.
We got to finish up here. We're pushing our limit on the occupation of this room, but I want, like I say, I wanted to get everybody. We got 3 more people on the list behind you in opposition. So.
Okay. For instance, to speak of the lack of staffing, after I told CCA that I was going to be leaving, resigning there, they placed me in a what would be considered like a K building in the Department of Corrections, where there's 3 to 4 wings. I was put in there. There was no staff out checking on the offenders. I was the only one there, and due to the security, I could not go out and check on offenders because I had the key to the security bubble and could not give up that security.
All right. Could you wrap up?
Sure. Someone spoke to programming and rehabilitation services available in the core facility at Appleton. The library is probably approximately the size of this room, and I don't believe you could fit 900 offenders in there. The health services and other areas are also small. The core building is
Wrap up, please.
built up.
Wrap up,
Yes.
please.
1 second.
Well, I keep saying wrap up, you keep going. I got to get 3 other people up here.
Okay.
Our members are going to start filtering out. There'll be nobody to hear you pretty soon, so.
The core of the facility is not built to promote security for offenders nor the safety of the staff.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Now, who have we got on the list here? We've got Megan Hill, if she's here. members have to be to other community, but I want a maximum number here to hear you. So if you could make it short, we have a Rachel English and Jen Rubenstein or something like that. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Megan Hill. I'm on the board of directors of Minnesota Public Interest Research Group. Additionally, I am the founder and president of Jewish Community Action at the University of Minnesota. I'm a resident of Minneapolis and a student at the University of Minnesota. Today, I'd like to speak as a moral and logical voice in opposition to mass incarceration, specifically in regards to the proposed reopening of the Prairie Correctional Facility in Appleton. To start, I'd like to reiterate the human rights violations committed by CoreCivic, from forced labor, food shortages, poor sanitation, and most notably, medical negligence. At one of their facilities, they even prescribed drinking water for broken bones and post-surgery care. This is not a corporation I'd like to see Minnesota doing business with. Even without private ownership and operation, reopening this facility is not the answer. Because of Appleton's remote location, it would force a barrier for inmates to have connections with their families, and this would contribute to us raising the recidivism rates due to the lack of connection. I'd like to make it clear we are not against the city of Appleton. We too would like to see their economy prosper. However, doing this at the expense of human beings is immoral. There are alternatives. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a student, and working with MPIRG, I've met students from our Morris chapter. These students are bright individuals, and they have outstanding goals and aspirations. If we really want to see rural Minnesota grow, we need to make it attractive for young people to want to live there. A prison is not going to achieve that. Appleton and the people of rural Minnesota have the potential and the need to be the leaders of something better, from the deficit in rural health care to the capacity for renewable energy and water quality. These are the industries that will make jobs and attract young people to the prairie. In closing, my colleagues and I refuse to stand idly by as individuals in power make the regretful decision to expand our prison system and build an economy off the backs of inmates while failing to address the root cause of the issue and explore alternatives. It's time we stop pinning the interests of economically distressed communities against each other. It's time we do better for our communities of color that for so long have been devastated by mass incarceration and countless other forms of institutional racism. And it's time we do better for rural Minnesota who are hurting and fighting to regain their sense of home. I sincerely hope you will make the right decision in saying no to this unethical implementation of mass incarceration. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have Rachel English. Followed by Jim, and that's the last one I have on my list there.
My name is Rachel English, and I'm with Jewish Community Action. We are here to testify in opposition to House File 1510 and in support of the amendment offered by Representative Hillstrom. We are a Jewish faith-based organization. Passover is coming up, as many of you know, in less than a month. And we know our history. We know our stories, we know in our traditions what it's like to be enslaved, imprisoned for profit, to build pyramids and monuments for the powerful. The Minnesota government is by the people, for the people, of the people. So if we believe that someone needs to be corrected, we believe that is a core role of our government, which represents the people and is accountable to the people in this position. As a faith-based organization, we would like to see these funds used for health and human services to promote the growth and revitalization of communities, supporting mental health care, senior health care, and other things that would reduce the number of folks heading into the prison, such as House File 2176, which Representative O'Neill outlines, and the Restore the Vote amendment that Representative Dean offered. I just got off the phone with someone actually out in West Central Minnesota. And even though our communities are often pitted against each other in the popular media, what we found is that we actually have quite a lot in common. We want the same things: health care, clean energy, clean water. That's where we believe our money should be going instead of to support a private corporation. This bill has been sold as an economic solution, but it actually will not do that. So Passover is the story of when we were freed from Egypt, when we came out of the Exodus. So I urge this community to keep that in mind, to think about the freedom of folks. And I'm going to introduce Jim Rubenstein, who is a JCA member and who's going to talk a little bit more.
Mr. Rubenstein, with your name and title, and begin, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. My name is James Rubenstein. My newest and most favorite title is Zadie, which is Yiddish for grandfather. I used to be a lawyer, actually still am admitted, but I retired from the practice of law about a year and a half ago. But in my over 40 years of practice, I was a business lawyer dealing with business issues, mostly in the area of bankruptcy and workouts of businesses. And as often occurs in a bankruptcy case, sometimes assets must be sold, anything from airplanes to office furniture, and sometimes whole businesses. Now, when you have to sell an asset, that drives the price down. Unless you have a lot of really willing and eager buyers, you don't get what it's worth. There's a similar thing operating here with the current version of this bill. The Commissioner of Corrections is put in a situation where he has to buy. He has to buy a specific facility from a specific vendor. That's going to raise the price. That's bad business. Now, in addition, if the Commissioner determines he needs, say, a compact car, this requires him to go and negotiate with one car dealer for one model car, which is more like an 18-wheeler compared with his needs. So that's also bad business. So in addition to everything else that has been criticized about this bill, I think it makes the state a sucker for a bad deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We, point of questions here for the committee here before we end our meeting. Go ahead, Representative Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If Commissioner Roy could come back down.
Commissioner Roy.
I just have really a series of questions, and I'll try to be brief.
I'll let the members, whatever they want to do about their presence here, they have to be places, but go ahead.
Yeah. So my understanding that number one indicator of an individual recidivating is the inability or the lack or no visitors actually coming, visiting them when they show up. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Representative Dean, visitation is one element of recidivating.
So as I look at the distance of Appleton from the Twin Cities area, I know we have this map on the distance from St. Cloud, but I know that most of the people that get processed in St. Cloud don't come from St. Cloud. So to Appleton from Minneapolis is 2 hours and 52 minutes. Faribault is actually 52 minutes. Stillwater is 34 minutes. St. Cloud is 1 hour and 8 minutes. And Lino Lakes is only 30 minutes. So we're all of a sudden going to be tripling the travel time for families to come and visit their loved ones who are currently locked up. So that's one thing. Next question. Does Minnesota DOC standards deviate at all from the ACA standards for a facility?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative, we are currently in an ACA audit mode to get all of our facilities accredited, and we have to meet almost 100% to be accredited. And we are not fully accredited in all of our facilities, but that's our goal.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk about treatment and, you know, the length of time that sometimes people are there, that they can't get access to treatment. And thank you, Representative O'Neill, for her bill. Have we been increasing the amount of funding for treatment so that the DOC can actually provide treatment to those inmates who do have chemical dependency or abuse problems?
Mr. Chair, Representative Dean, since I've been commissioner in the past 6 years, there has been one round of a major increase. And then last year, if we consider some bills that came through with halfway house enhancement and our hub centers, that would be the second round, but we are not adequately meeting our treatment needs.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner. Just two more questions here. I'll try to be really quick. So I know that we did the drug sentencing reform a year ago, and there was possible more sentencing reform that was being considered as far as making the things that we enacted a year ago actually retroactive. Can you speak to the number of beds that would have freed up within the next, 3 to 6 months if we would have made that retroactive?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative, with great accuracy, I cannot tell you that.
Approximately?
Sorry.
Okay. My understanding is when we're looking at the numbers, it was an additional 300 to 400 beds that would actually be freed up. And one last question. As I read the amendment, it says that the commissioner shall enter into a contract either to purchase and operate or to lease and operate an existing facility located. But it also says that, the number of prison beds to house the current or projected prison population. So in 2018, you might project overcrowding of 500-600 beds. But what if you went out to 2040 and we drastically changed our sentencing and the ways in which we incarcerated? Theoretically, you could say we're 3,000 beds over what our need might be at that time.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative Dean, I tend not to think that far down the road.
Well, but this bill that we're, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go through the chairs. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. But this bill says you not only need to consider current, but also projected. And there's no timeline on what that projection is. So I would assume, maybe wrongly assume, that you might do a scenario 5 years from now, a scenario 10 years from now, and a scenario 15 or 20 years from now to make those types of determinations.
Mr. Chair, Representative, our projections that we feel are pretty accurate under the current state and current laws are about good for about 10 years out. And if you recall my presentation, I showed the old projection pre-drug reform, and I showed the projection post-drug reform, and there was a significant difference between the two.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies for not going through you.
Commissioner, if we let everybody out of prison, we wouldn't need any, would we?
I hope that would be a dream state, and after 43 years doing this work, I don't think we will ever be at that point.
The Moose Lake is 1 hour and 42 minutes away from St. Paul. Is all hell breaking loose up there with the lack of treatment and SRT teams and all that other stuff?
Moose Lake is, Mr. Chair, Moose Lake is in good order, and they utilize local hospital and Duluth services.
Which I'm sure we would. All right, any other questions? If not, we've done with public testimony. We've gone over our limit 45 minutes already, so if there isn't, Chair will... Yes.
I'm sorry, I just see one person who was
I
raising
know,
his
I've
hand. Could you
seen
give him
one
like
too,
1
but no,
minute?
we've gone 45 minutes over already, so. Chair will move House File 1510 to be held over for possible inclusion.